Okay, do we have minutes? Right? Are we unmuted? Yep. Can you just bring it forward to the slide? Yep. Oh, you already did that.
You did.
I didn't. All right.
You were locked in.
Oh.
Perfect.
Yep. Are we recording? All right, seeing as it's 1:30, I'm gonna call this meeting to order of the ARPA Strategy and Outcomes Commission. We are gonna start off directly with public comments. Start in the room first, and then we're gonna go to Zoom. Anybody here that would like to make public comments, go ahead and walk up, please. If you don't mind standing here, so the owl will pick you up nice. Or sit down, or just come on in close.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bob Schmeichel. I'm the town Anina chairman, but also the town chairman for all the units, town units here in Winnebago County. And I thank you the opportunity to speak here this afternoon. First of all, I want to thank the committee and the county executive for looking at these allegations as we go forward. I think they're very important allegations that are important not only for the county, but for towns here in Winnebago County. These allocations, federal allocations, local allocations, what have you, way back in January 2022 were put out with this document. The format that you put out, the first question I would have for you folks, was this predicated on this document? Because this document had a number of additions brought to it and addendums, and I don't know if that was brought to play into your thought process, what you have here. So I would ask that to make sure that we have all the addendums brought up to date. The other thing, as I said, the towns are very active community members of Winnebago County. And I should hope and would please the Towns Association that you consider our responsibilities to you, the county, as what you have responsibilities to us, the towns. So thank you for your deliberation. And if you had any questions at all for the towns, we're always available to help you. And I thank you for the people that are on this committee from the towns. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in person that would like to speak? Anyone else in person that would like to speak? More time, anyone else in person? All right, we're gonna move to Zoom. I see we have a couple hands up there. I'm gonna call left to right order. It looks like District 26, Conley Hanson, I'm guessing. If we could.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Damo, and thank you to the board for allowing me to speak. I very much am appreciative for this committee and for the discussion. There are several projects that you are discussing that I am in favor of. There are several that I'm looking for more answers of. So I'm very curious today to hear your points number 4 and 5 on the agenda. I was all ready to advance these projects, or many of the projects at least, when it came before the board. And I have listened very intently to community members of Winnebago County that said, please don't accept these funds, or please do accept these funds. Please advocate for this project or not this other project. The most important thing to me, and why I am anxious for this discussion and to send it back, is I hope if anybody knows anything of me, whether anything passes or fails, I just need to make sure I's are dotted and T's are crossed. That is the most important thing for me. And that's the reason I voted for this committee to rediscuss these projects and put it back forward to the board. So thank you for allowing me to speak. I again look forward to items addressed in 4 and 5 on the agenda, because there are projects that I would love to advance. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next will be Supervisor Dowling.
Thank you, Mr. Damo. Is it possible that I share my screen?
Let me ask the co-chair. I don't have an issue with that.
I have no issue.
All right.
I don't know if it's set up.
Does this work?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, so my question today is, can we get to the grocery store? I did submit a formal ARPA request for the funding for this project, just so you know. I'd like you to consider Jackson Street in Oshkosh. Jackson Street serves as a main access point to Oshkosh. This is a one-lane street with both retail and homes. From the courthouse to Murdoch Avenue is about 1.5 miles. Commercial Street in Neenah also serves both retail and homes. It's a 2-lane street from the corner of 3rd to Taco to Commercial, and Winneconne is about 1.7 miles. Winneconne Avenue is a county road. It also includes both retail and homes on that street. It is a 2-lane street, and from the corner of Commercial and Winneconne to Green Bay Road is about 1.1 miles. Racine Street in Menasha is a county road. It has both retail and homes on it. It is a 1-lane street, and from the 441 exit to Racine Street is about 1 mile in length. Appleton Road in Menasha is a county road with both retail and homes. It is a 2-lane street. From Midway Road to 9th Street is about 1.1 miles. Appleton Road serves as our main connecting point for schools, Clovis Grove Elementary, Maplewood Middle School, and UW Fox Cities campus. This is also our only access to the grocery stores. Our last grocery store closed about 3 years ago with walking access. Our nearest grocery store is Piggly Wiggly or Festival Foods. This is also the connecting entrance to Appleton, Fox Crossing, Menasha, and Neenah. Appleton Road also serves for public transit and school bus stops. While Fox Crossing and Menasha citizens only make up 18% of our county, we are still here. The last time this project was considered, it was in 1999, so I think it's time that we look at it again. I do have letters of support for this project from the city of Menasha, the Menasha Joint School District, UW Fox Cities campus, and the East Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. So here's a brief overview of the street from Google Maps. The red section on the map represents Fox Crossing from 9th Street to Airport Road. That's their territory. And then the purple section on the map represents Winnebago County from Airport Road to Midway, 1.2 miles total. So my proposal is that we add a sidewalk on Appleton Road, giving our residents access to the grocery store and our local schools. I'm requesting a $0 property assessment to the residents and businesses along the street because it has been neglected for so long. The estimated cost for this project is between $750 and $1.25 million. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we're going to go to Supervisor Binder.
Thank you. I would just like to make a comment so that all the committee members know that every entity of Winnebago County got ARPA funds, the cities, the towns, the villages. And when we're using our funds, make sure the county's needs are met first before we basically give external money to nonprofits, to whatever other entity is asking. Because we have a lot of needs in this county, just like Rachel Dowling just mentioned, that need to be addressed. We got a community park that the shelters are over 30 years old. The playground equipment's over 30 years old. The city of Oshkosh just built Little Oshkosh. They rebuilt it. That was $750,000. We have no really nice gym equipment or playground equipment in County Park. We have a small little recreational area that we did a few years ago, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done in our basically facility, and we need to basically use our ARPA funds. I believe the city of Oshkosh got $21 million of ARPA funds, and all the towns and villages got ARPA funds. So let's use this money wisely to do the projects in our county that need to be accomplished. And if there's money left over, let's share it with whoever else we can share it with. But let's take the time and the due diligence to make sure the county's needs are met before we consider giving money to other entities. Thank you.
Thank you. Continuing on Zoom, Deb Martin.
Thank you. I agree. As a county taxpayer, I live in Oshkosh, on Witzel, or just off of Witzel on Wildwood. And I want to support that. So the city of Oshkosh got money and they've already allocated most of it. I don't understand why the county's been dragging their feet for way over a year on this. Let's say, let's take some actions, whether it be to give some sidewalk to people to safely get places or help in the park. But and even if you can't decide on all of it, let's get something going. This is ridiculous. As we're all taxpayers of our county, the things that you don't use these funds for, that the rest, the cities, the towns, everybody's found places to put this money to good use. We should be able to do that too. So you might be a big group, but come on, let's get some decisions made and take some actions. Thank you. And thank you for all of your service, because this is a big job that you have.
Thank you, and thank you for the comments. We had some people that came in afterwards, so I'm gonna turn it back to the room since we're still in public comments. Is there anybody that showed up late that would like to make a public comment? Right, yeah, come on up. Fantastic. Right there, as long as the owls can hear you, so the people at home and the recording picks up.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kelly Olson. I'm the Support Services Director with Damascus Road Project, and I have Lisa, our Executive Director and Founder, with us, and Tara, our Outreach Director. And we are coming today to talk with you guys about securing some funding for our nonprofit organization, Damascus Road Project. And we have a huge local population that we serve of women who've been trafficked sexually or sexually exploited. Since we started counting in 2017 and keeping track, we've served over 550 women. And we have a very underserved population in our community. And we need to stretch a little bit to take care of these people who are our community members and citizens. And we are in the process right now. We have an office in the 404 North Main Street building that we've outgrown, and we're in the process of securing a new, larger office. And coming to you today because we have really experienced a hit with COVID-19 to funding, and we have experienced a serious increase in the number of people that we need to serve because of COVID. So we're in a really unique place where we kind of got a double whammy, compliments of this virus, and our community falls really short serving these women. We're talking anyone, you know, from 17, 18 years old. Our oldest client is in her 60s. And these people are experiencing a higher rate of homelessness, mental health issues, alcohol or drug dependency. And there's really not anything that exclusively serves their specific needs. And so we're here today to plead on behalf of all of these community members who need some support. We are currently looking at a building that, what's the name of the church? Community Christian Daycare. That's kind of right behind Red Robin. That's up for sale, and we're looking to acquire that building. So we would have a lease to own option, and to be able to provide wraparound services in that building for our community members. We have easy access by bus, because there are 2 bus routes that cover that area. So all of our population that doesn't drive will be accessible to them. And we need your help.
Could you repeat the name of the organization?
Sure, Damascus Road Project. We are an all volunteer nonprofit. Thank you.
All right, anybody else in the room that would like to make a comment? And anybody else on Zoom? All right, we're gonna go ahead and close public comments. Thank you, everybody, for giving us your comments, and feedback like that really helps us to do our jobs. All right, moving on, we're looking for approval of the minutes from the February 2nd meeting.
So
Motion.
moved.
I got a motion and a second.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? Any discussion? All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, that carries. Were we supposed to do that roll call?
Only if you want. I think everyone's here except Tim.
All right.
And he let us know that and I talked to Ethan and he'll get him the information.
Okay,
Correct, Ethan?
so nobody opposed, okay. All right, we're gonna go ahead and move on to number 3, comments from the co-chairs. And Tom, if you don't mind, I'd like to start.
That's fine. You
All right.
can go ahead, your staff, so.
All right, so first, I want to say that today I've invited more staff from the county to come and help us facilitate our direction with the ARPA commission. And I want to clear a couple things up from my perspective. First of all, the document that went around with the county internal ask, the ask as a whole and the community ask. When this commission first asked us, what would this look like? Can you give us a picture? This was simply my idea of what this could look like. It was never meant to be an exact template of what our positions are going to be. It was meant to bring as an idea of how we could break this up. We did agree on the 25-50-25, and I appreciate that. But I want to let you know that none of these other numbers are really set in stone. It was just a suggestion to give us a little bit of direction of how this could go. That being said, of the 25% internal ask, as the chief executive officer of the county, these are asks that I was prepared to bring forward as far as ask of the county. That's why these projects were considered. That's why these projects went to the county board. And that is more of an internal thing for us to do. For the rest of the stuff, how we want to break them down, if there's things you agree with, don't agree with, the things you think are overfunded, underfunded, that is for us as a commission to decide and advise the county board as project going forward. And that is what I'm asking staff to help us simply facilitate our discussion on that. I understand that the public and other people have been frustrated with the pace of this. To be very clear, I do not believe that we are behind schedule. I would rather us get this right than to rush it and look back and regret some of the choices we've made. We are finding out every day of another program that is coming out of Washington, DC with more money for more things. At NACO, when I was at NACO, we heard about still money available from ARPA from the federal government. We learned about infrastructure money that's going around. We learned about inflation reduction money. There's enough money being printed to make your head spin, if you ask me, but it's out there. So I want to make sure that we are looking at all these things when we're considering what best to do with our $33.5 million to make the best impact. So I appreciate the concerns of the community that we are slowing down. But I would take responsibility for that, and I would rather we get it right than just get it out the door as fast as we can. And that is what I have for my comments. Tom, I'll turn it over to you.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, but I also agree with Deb Martin up there. I think it's time that we start getting going and get something done. I won't say that we dragged our feet, but I think now is time to get into action, and so I think we've taken our time now. Now let's go. My last comment is Supervisor Buck was also excused today, so we get you the information to him. Thank you.
All right, moving on, it takes us into our item number 4, review and questions on previous presentation on the acceptable uses of the state and local fiscal recovery funds, the SLRF, provided by ARPA, and practices to account for Winnebago County's allocations. So question discussions from commissioner members from our presentation that Paul gave us on the 6th. Anybody have any questions on that and had time to think about it? Review, anything come up after the meeting?
Well, I appreciate the explanation, but what's lacking is direction from administration or a suggestion as to what we're going to do and what process to get that approved by the county board specifically. Are we going to address that today?
I don't think we're gonna address that today. We will address in our next ARPA commission meeting. Paul, I guess you did a fantastic job. So thank you very much for the presentation last week. I think it cleared up a lot of things for us.
I just think that maybe he should be ready, not this month, but possibly in March for the whole county board to hear him. And possibly give that presentation again, or have it printed out and have it on their desk or something, and because that's where the questions all come in, that county board.
He is scheduled to give it to, we requested that for March 7th. So if there's anything that anybody here would like us to add to that presentation for the full county board, you could also bring it up now so that we can make sure that if we prepare, if he prepares, and if there's other things to prepare for, we have that. This is the purpose of this agenda item.
I would just say really make sure that the board understands that lost revenue is not a made up word. That, because that's what it seems like the rumor mill keeps saying, it's, we're skirting the regulations, so make sure they understand that the regulations said to use this term and use this calculation. Because that was great, that cleared it up tremendously.
Paul, the 5% that you're measuring against 2019. Okay, that needs to really be clean with everybody, or cleared up with everybody. You didn't see it in as a measure against 2019 in the beginning. You did not see the lost revenue by accounts come forward to measure the way seemed to have been measured earlier. Okay, so those two things are kind of still wavering around in people's minds at the board level.
It's wages. I don't know if you want all the account numbers, which I don't really think the board wants or needs that much detail of every single account number. It's wages basically for the most part, and there's certain wages you cannot use. Like DHS gets a lot of grants, so a lot of their wages are not admissible under the calculation. So there's certain departments that get more grants than other departments, so to be safe, we pull them out so that we can make it through an audit, so that it won't come back and have to go back around again. So we're still going through that calculation with the auditors, so we're not done with that yet. We still have to get their input. So we're still actually fine tuning the final calculation, but we know what we're looking at in more detail than what we've done last time.
If I might, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
If indeed the board, in its wisdom, decides not to accept this counter proposal from administration, then the option then will only be to accept the 10 million as revenue lost and appropriate the balance. Are we prepared to address that? Within the time frame, that would be 24 to 26.
Well,
If that's your only backup option, then we need to be prepared to address that.
no, absolutely. And that's, I think that's the point. The point is to make the argument that,
That needs to be included in that argument
correct,
in detail.
I agree. So we should add that to the presentation on the
Yes,
special orders meeting.
if you reject option A, option B is this. And that might be, I think there's a couple categories that would fit into that 10 million, but you're gonna be up against the wall with a lot of the other projects. Obviously.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, that's the purpose of the next agenda item, is for you all to have a big discussion so that
Oh,
as
okay.
administration, we can take a look at what comes out of that discussion and put a proposal together, whether it's the accounting on the backside and how we report to the federal government's the least of our worries. The bigger part is what projects do you guys want to spend money on? What do you want, projects you want to propose to the county board? What buckets do you want to propose to the county board? Once we have a better, now that Paul's new, I'm new, Mary Ann's new, Cassie's new, what Andrew's new, health is coming in. Once we have that clarity, we can put that proposal together. And then we can explain how we can do it on the back end to report to the federal government. So. It's coming.
And I would say, at NACO, Supervisor Bender was there as well, and he was able to talk to one of the authors of this bill and got clarification that everything we're doing is following their rules. He was very satisfied with that. I think that'll be impactful impact. The one thing that I would like to add to the presentation on the 7th is other examples of other communities that have done the same thing. I believe the city of San Diego claimed their entire 133 million in the same way. There are plenty of other examples out there of cities, municipalities, and counties that have done this exact same maneuver, and are using it to free up some of those strings, timelines and programs that they can use it on, so they can directly impact what they feel they needed in their communities. We are not alone in this, and I think that will be very helpful.
Because the other alternative is the 10 million, or we have 10 months to spend 23 million, correct? Is
To
it-
allocate.
To allocate, determine, but it has to be determined by December of 23, correct?
24.
Oh, December
Yeah.
of 24, okay.
And spent by 26,
26.
or actually the project started by 26, correct?
Money.
I think it's money expended.
Spent.
Money
Oh,
expended. And I think it's at the end of
It's a
fiscal.
yeah, because
You have to be under contract, right, and or POs issued, not just an idea of a plan, you have to actually have that you have contract POs, which are contracts by the end of 24. Then you can spend it in the next 2 years, but you gotta have all that other contract signed and taken care of. It's not just having your project defined in 24, right? It's getting in project and POs, yeah.
So it almost is determined by the end of this year to make sure we have another year to get the contracts finalized. Okay.
Okay, any other discussion on that item? Any discussion there? No, all right. Moving on to facilitation and discussion to create a planning document which includes the priorities for spending of the county ARPA's state and local fiscal recovery funds grants. Then I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to staff. We have Heidi and Ashley here, and Doug is here from the health department. It's just here to help us to facilitate how to get to where we need to be. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to staff.
Is it better if I'm up front?
Please, yep.
Before I get started, I do have hard copies of the slides that we're going to present today and a resource sheet if anybody needs, so I'll just route that around. So again, thank you. I'm Doug Guerin, Public Health Director. Happy to have Heidi Keating and Ashley Ramel here from the Health Department, just to help facilitate a discussion today. Our goal here really is just to get some parameters out for you, some structure to have you, really start moving forward in terms of allocations. And really, in order to do that, you need to set some guideposts. Really, you have a grid which you're moving forward with, but the grid itself is fairly vague right now in terms of categories. We'd like to help you tighten that up a little bit, and then also establish some criteria for those categories that'll help you make decisions down the road. We're here as a resource, and so if there's questions, if there's data needs, if there's things that we can do to help support you in making decisions, we want to do that. Our intent really is just to be a support for you in this process. Well, we're going to be soliciting a lot of discussion from you. We really want to hear from you today, so we really want you to talk. We're going to ask you a lot of questions. just to try to help stimulate conversation. We're gonna record those comments, not only on Zoom, but we'll have a sheet on Zoom as well, so the people that are watching can see that. And then we'll also record those on easels for you to be able to reference as we take our discussion forward. So for today, there's a few things that we'd like to really help you accomplish. One is really identify those high level funding goals. The grid is a great start and it has categories in it, but we want you to take a half a step back on that and just think about what it is that you want to have accomplished with these funds after they've been dispersed. So we'll ask you some questions related to that. We'll get into a little more detail about the categories themselves, some parameters that might help you fit when a proposal comes in, or if somebody has a suggestion, which category should that really go into. And then we have a couple of tools that may help you, map out some of those proposals. Ideally, you'll have a lot of proposals, either, submitted from the commission or other input that you may request before you start allocating those funds out, so that you can prioritize what you have available to you. We certainly wouldn't want you to start funding something and then, as John mentioned, regret that, oh, we funded that, but we never thought about this. We'd really like to have you collect everything as much as you can moving forward, being sensitive to, of course, that we do want to start, spending those funds for community benefit. And then finally, we'll try to do a quick evaluation at the end of the meeting to see what went well and what didn't go well and what you might need moving forward. So, a couple more things. Thank you. So one of the things that before we get started on our big goals is to think about how we're communicating the work of this commission, how we're able to make sure that those that are watching online understand what we're doing, and then to be as clear as we can with one another. And so I'll ask, in order for note taking, please just, one person at a time talk. Please ask for clarification. Borrowing a technique from one of our facilitator colleagues called an acronym. If there's a point in time that any of you don't understand something that's being discussed, an acronym is used or a concept needs to be explained, just knock on the table. You don't have to interrupt somebody speaking, but that lets the speaker know that you need some additional clarity. They can come back around. And then in terms of input, there's been a lot of discussion about, what input is needed, what is not. We'd really like you to be intentional about, knowing what input you need. And these are questions right now, just to start getting you in a frame of mind for this discussion. We're not looking for answers for any of these questions right now. But, who are the stakeholders that you need to hear from? Ultimately, it's the county board that's going to have to approve all of the expenditures. Certainly a considerable stakeholder there. Are there others in the community that you want to hear from? Right now, you've heard mostly from people that have been proactive and have sought this meeting out and come to present to you. There hasn't really been, a call out for, projects or interests. And after you kind of make your goals known, it may become more clear if you want to ask for additional input. And then, are there things that you need more information about? There's a lot of resources that can be shared with you or referenced to you if you have questions about things. Don't be afraid to ask questions. There's so much talent in this room, and you'll all have something to offer. So please just ask questions. Don't make assumptions that people know things. And please, give the benefit of the doubt and explain things for either this group or others that are watching. And then consider, John already mentioned, is it worth reviewing what others have done? It sounds like you're already on a path to deal with some of that. So with that, Heidi and Ashley are going to start prompting you for some answers to some basic questions to help you set some high level goals about what it is that you really want to see these funds used for.
We're gonna try to kind of live, take notes in real time here, both on Zoom and on the boards back here. So bear with us as we try to figure out exactly how that's, where it will probably be bouncing back and forth between slides. Here.
So just to, get started with this is, what are the goals really for this funding?
I'm sorry, can you
Yeah.
just introduce yourself? Wait.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Heidi Keating. I'm going on 2 years here at Winnebago County Health Department and I'm a public health planner. Currently, I'm working on our community health assessment. So this is something that looking at the community and public health that we look at the community as what are the needs and what are the strengths and assets as well. So as far as this opportunity, we're really pleased to be able to talk with you. In some of the planning that we do, one of the processes is starting with the goals, right? And looking at what is the impact that you want this funding to make for Winnebago County. And, these are just some guiding questions. Is anybody who's gonna be better off as a result of this funding and how it's allocated? What's gonna be improved? So that we're clear about that. So the community is clear. So it's that you are using the funds strategically, that you've identified, well, this is the problem, and then this is the solution to this, and really thinking about, what you want it to look like at the end, and then kind of working your way backwards as to where those funds need to be invested. So we really just, want to start kind of real broad and say, with this funding, what would you like to, what is the impact you want to make? And just that you're able to articulate that.
Can I start?
Yeah, please.
What I'm looking at is the funds being distributed throughout the county, not just one area gets all the funds. And I think personally, I'm gonna be tracking where it's going to see how it's affected. And it's not an easy thing to do because you have to look at the amount of people, what people are you affecting, where they are. So that's one of the things I'm looking at is where's the money going and who's gonna help?
Who are you hoping to see it help?
People that need it.
Okay, I think that's the brilliant start of this discussion, right? Is who are those people that need it and why is that important to you?
I live in a very small world.
Okay,
District 3, north side of Appleton, we have no cows in our district at all, okay? So what our needs are up there is real different. It's just you're exactly right. I'm looking forward to seeing where people come to us and then they can project a need that we consider as a group here to be viable. And that's what's going to be very difficult because now let's say we have the 4 pots of money. To me, I think it would be good to take and identify what pots they are so people can kind of guess, okay, I'm going to be going into this pot, and then I have to structure my presentation to this group to show that that's where I want to be.
yeah, so I'm gonna interrupt you for just a second because that's our goal here today too. And what we really want to do is just start by eliciting some feedback from you all as to what those end goals look like. So we can help you figure out how to categorize those pots and narrow those things down. So I think we have the same kind of end goal for today. We're just starting with this very broad discussion about what do you want, what impact do you want to see $33 million make in our county?
When I'm looking through the suggestions, it looks like a lot of them revolve around safety, like rapid intervention vehicle, radios, fiber loop. I mean, in infrastructure to nonprofits to everything, it looks like safety is kind of the reoccurring
theme, at least for these suggested projects. I don't know what's all needed right now, but it looks like safety is a big one that they all kind of revolve around. And maybe safety and homeless but I can see homeless being also a safety issue for physical well-being. As
You're
far as
proposing community safety
category,
as a use of the funds.
that's what I'm seeing. It
Well,
looks like.
it's not about what you're seeing, it's about what you think as a member of this commission of what you want to see this money for. You know, there's suggestions on there, but we're not looking at the suggestions right now. We're just saying, hey, you know, in 5 years from now, what do you want to say that we did with this money? And what if
Well,
you-
and without knowing what the need is outside of my small world, I mean, all these because when grants come in, people are gonna be like, oh my gosh, yes, that's great, that's great, that's great. So we have to narrow it down. So I think safety, these are huge needs, all revolving around safety. And I think that's something that the community could, obviously, who doesn't want a safer community?
So say, so as directed as way, what are the kinds of things people are asking? What are the needs that people are coming to you with? What do you wish you had more money for to help them out?
Shelter is a huge one.
Yeah, can we say shelter / housing?
What confuses me a tad bit is the county has a responsibility to provide certain aspects or certain services in the county. Now, this is above and beyond that. So one of the things we gotta watch out for is we don't start subsidizing stuff that should have been part of the county doing that up front. So that makes it even more difficult, because now we're going again, what's above and beyond that we're looking for to have the impact that we're looking for, and yet not get tangled up where, you know, like you create how can I get into trouble here, I suppose? Here I go. You create a daycare center, but now all of a sudden, when the money's gone, they come back to you and say, I need more money. Because you don't want to do that, because that's not what this money's for.
There's nothing that's off the table. And one of the tools that we'll work with you on is how to evaluate projects that came in or that are gonna be on the grid. And just through using what you have as developing right now as guideposts and asking some questions about the projects that come in, and that's further in that slide set, there's some example questions. You'll be able to prioritize and narrow down what you fund and what you don't. And so throw everything out that is on your mind that you can today.
What do you want the future to look like? Is there something that, you envision this place in 5 and 10 years? What needs to be invested now to have the future that you want? Daycare, is it a need? Who and what are the challenges in our community that this county is facing?
We won't know that though until we start, I won't know that because of my very sheltered life I've lived. Until you start coming in and then getting, like with the application that Tom did, and then start saying, okay, how does that rate? What pot does it go in and how does that rate? This is the way I'm looking at it right now, because I don't know any better. I don't have a lot of people knocking my door. Now after I said that, I suppose that's
I think one of the things for me, when I think of what is the function of county government? And that's a question I ask myself a lot. That's why I'm happy that we're pushing for a strategic plan to give us those guidelines. But, what I see that as being is, number one, we are responsible for the lives and well-being of our people. What is that? Is that economic growth? Is that a part of it? Is that tourism? Is that a part of it?
Facilitator of all these things.
Correct.
From the county.
From the county. That's a county mission. A county mission is human services. Cities don't have that. That's our job. So when nonprofits do a better job and Damascus Roads over there is doing a better job, that helps our human services division, because less support that's directly coming from us and more of the community picking it up. So when I look at these things, I break it down to public works. You know, what does that mean? What does public safety mean? What are parks, recreational, land use? What health and human services? These should be priorities of our county that hopefully the strategic plan lays out for us. And that's what I asked them to help us facilitate today. What are our priorities in this group? What are our needs that we think that we should do that? Whether it be direction for me on my 25%. Public works for me, that's the building study. We have no idea what kind of deferred maintenance we're looking at. I guarantee you, we could spend that whole $33.5 billion fixing some of the buildings for them. And so for me, obviously it's health and human services, because that's a big thing for me, is housing. That's why in my breakdown here, there was such a big thing on housing, because it's such an intricate thing. It's not a one-shop stop. I mean, their housing is different for a domestic abuse survivor than it is for somebody facing the sex trade versus a family unit versus a teenager who we have no option for in our county, other than Nina Boys and Girls Club, I think, has a teenage spot.
No youth shelter.
No youth shelter in the entire county.
Appleton, but I don't know if it does reach into, there's some shelter care, but it's super, super temporary.
So we have one time for a shot in the arm. What are those things? I'd like to put land and water conservation in there. I think Chuck's idea of his proposal is huge. I mean, it's one-time shot for us to actually make a long-term difference in our county, for a county that has over 11% of the state's fresh water in it.
That goes back to your word that you initially brought forward.
Legacy.
That single word, legacy,
So there's,
and the
yeah, there's,
application of that.
when you think of the goals, right? So it could be like, you know, these are broad, right? So it's like environmental sustainability. It could be around families, you know, that families are able to thrive here, you know, just really, you know, that areas that you want, you know, it can be more than one goal, but, you know, kind of this, you know, who are you looking to help out? And what areas, if it's around our environment, let's, you know, put it up there.
Just one example of the word, legacy, that could apply broadly to
Legacy.
a lot of these projects. But the difference would be, it might not be wise to apply it to a short-term situation as opposed to another. Habitat for Humanity, been around for a long time. They build homes,
Mhm.
a very viable thing. That is a longer-term example of spending funds that benefit Winnebago County and the community, along with conservation issues.
So you're looking for long-term legacy type of projects?
Well, I keyed off the county exec's comments when we originally started all this, and I thought that word was quite applicable to the initiative going forward.
I would agree with you that that's a really key word here. And so I think, you know, what we're doing is trying to get you all to brainstorm some ideas, but under that frame of legacy, like what type of legacy do you want to leave behind with the decisions that you make with $33 million? We've got some really good examples here, but we certainly haven't heard from everybody.
Doug, we just spent, or are spending, neighborhood investment grant, which is $10 million. Now, want to double up again, or do we want to kind of spread the peanut butter over the entire piece of toast?
It sounds good to me. I mean, I like that phrase.
I know.
Meaningful change often comes with, you know, really strong investments. Yeah, we can spread money around. I mean, you just have to think about what's the impact. Are we gonna make an impact with peanut butter, okay, spread around? Or do we make an impact by, you know, having a few core areas where we put a lot of funds into it and that we rally the community around to also invest in with us?
All I'm saying is that we've got 10 million out there right now. If you want
And
to
that's,
add on, or if we want to kind of make sure everybody gets a little shade.
and one of the considerations and one of the questions that we'll have on our grid for you is, are there other funding sources? Are there other funds of money that will address this? You know that there's opioid monies coming, you know, we have neighborhood investment funds already. You know, there may be some other funds that are coming down the pike that we can take advantage of or leverage. You know, are there projects that if we make an investment in now, we're gonna be ready to receive those funds or apply for those funds down the line?
You said rally the community, that bothered me, because now what community are we gonna rally? Are we gonna rally for Oshkosh, or, I know where this is coming from, Oshkosh, or where are we gonna be rallying it around? I think we got this 33 million given to Winnebago County. Wasn't given to any one particular area.
Right.
So I think that we gotta also remember the people out, heard Andrew say, or Rodina, any of them, I think we gotta remember the townships and all that out there too. A lot of them are getting new fire trucks this year. They all need radios. There's a lot of things that can be done for these other areas too, besides that. So if you want to say rally a community, it should be for everything. Not just things that you guys are thinking of housing and all that, because I can guarantee you some of them housings aren't gonna go in these areas. It's gonna be right here in the cities. And I'm not against the city, believe me, I'm not, but I'm just saying that don't forget about the other ones that are out there too, that gotta get some of that 33 million.
So Tom, that's a good point. Should public safety be on that list? Should that be a big,
Well,
because that's fire trucks, that's all these things for the townships, correct?
well, not only that, they've got other needs too. I mean, they don't get all the money for the roads and all this and that neither. So yes, I would say put townships on there for a concern for an overreach for fund goals.
There's 22 municipalities. We need to consider them all, but in the pot that's been suggested, how we fund that is the question. You can do projects, you can do it equally, fairly. I mean, these are all issues that have yet to be examined in more detail. And I would agree with Tom, we should not neglect the town government municipalities within this county. They have just as much need as everybody else.
So,
And that needs to be considered.
so assuming that's true, but what would you like to see the impact in some of these townships be?
Well, I proposed, and I'll continue to do that, the funding, currently we allocate 3 million. Be distributed equally to the municipalities, allowing their governments, their local town board, to make the decision on how to spend that money, as long as it's consistent with the COVID requirements. The purpose of this money being allocated to the states. So, and the municipalities, obviously.
So
So that's one direction. You could take and say, okay, well, we're gonna fund the fire truck. Town of Billings, which I live in and preside in, you just bought a new fire truck. $539,000 and increased the levy 47%. Well, that's okay, but didn't EPS come buy a new fire truck? Rushford bought one, they're joint. So you see the issues when you start doing by project. And you're gonna find all of the municipalities will not receive funding because fire trucks are very expensive. So that's one of the things that has to be discussed, but it still goes back to this term legacy. I mean, if you're gonna give the money out, it needs to be for projects that are long-term and benefit the community, whether it be a town government, city government, or county government, or village. That's just my thoughts.
So the way I interpret that is I hear that you really want there to be some decision-making power outside of this group here, that you would really like there to be some municipalities, some citizens, some other input outside of here. Am I interpreting that correctly? That you'd like some people to be able to make some decisions?
Well, no, not correctly. Only if we were to allocate funding to them. Then that would be on their side of the decision-making process. For instance, if we give it to a town board, how does that town board decide to spend the money? More than likely, they're gonna spend it on capital projects, i.e. roads. So you know, that's the board decision, but I would certainly think they would take public input, yeah.
Yes.
And to kind of piggyback along with those ideas, we do have grant type stipulations or grant type contracts. I don't know where that put it. We have a grant type contract that has been developed and was developed here.
If I could just keep us on track, I want to make sure that we're focused on objectives and goals here. Like, and I do appreciate what you have as far as the process after we get there, but I really want to make sure that this commission spends this time to focus on laying out some goals. And what we think that should be.
Well, a breakdown of 3 million or a breakdown of 10 million. So that all of the 22 towns are able to use it in some kind of meaningful manner in their own area. Can be set up as a grant of some sort. If set up as a grant, you would want to have some form of writing that grant, saying, okay, here. Now,
So-
Yeah, that's just,
So the
that's,
goal would be something like, distribution of funds in a way for all municipalities and towns, all.
all towns and municipalities.
That is something that you're talking about, like where it would be a higher level, we don't have to worry about the details, but a goal that you're looking at is that all the towns and municipalities have access to the county ARPA fund.
Yes, it would be a fair way of dealing with it overall, and it would actually back us away from having to make decisions in 22 different towns of different types of decisions or whatever. Could be infrastructure, it could be broadband, or it could be whatever out there. And if you could set up a grant type program where they can write a general critique of what they're going to do and put it into a contract, sign it and set it up. That would be one real strong way to go.
Morris, I just want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. So one proposal on the table is to give fund our municipalities and let them decide what to do with it. Another is to take those same funds, set them aside, have an application process so that you can prioritize the use of those funds by what projects are bought for. Is that correct?
Well, that's not quite, that's,
That's why I'm asking.
if you take each one of the municipalities and allow them to make their choices, and they fall within a category of what the ARPA programs are supposed to, then set up a grant program and set up the actual contract that allows them to be a subrecipient.
So they would apply for the funds with a proposal project in order to receive the funds. They wouldn't just receive them without.
And you could do it more equally amongst each one of the towns by taking us X number of dollars. We now have, or we plan on having, the entire amount contained because of our lost revenue situation.
Tom.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm not gonna go any farther on this, but I just wanna say, if you're gonna, say the towns or the 22 municipalities, gotta go ahead and write things. You better say Oshkosh and Nina and everybody else is gonna too, because I'll sit here and fight with you on that. I'm sorry.
I want to get this back on track. Yes,
I don't,
If we're gonna accept.
I'd like to move on.
yes.
Yeah, because I appreciate what you're saying, but I think
Yeah.
that's way far down the road.
Correct.
My observation is this, everybody's gonna have their own little special pot that they're gonna be pushing all around here. I think we know where the towns are right now, and, so once.
Consistent.
Yeah. So, you know, once I see how they're listed in there, I foresee that they're gonna be a general discussion that maybe a little bit on the heated side, and out of that will come an order. And an allotment. But until that point, to ask me like what I want, I don't know what I want.
Well, what do you want the result to be? I guess, you know.
That's right now, we're there, and want everybody to be happy, and peace on earth.
Okay, let's go with that. What do you want? There's can I just quickly go to this slide? The one with, so, you know, one of these ideas of like, I want peace on earth, is, and I want that too. We want children who are, you know, finish these sentences. This is just, these are prompts, right? It's, we want families that are, so this is, you know, the community that we live in. We want to live in a county or community that is, you know, like to get these goals so we can, so that there's agreement, and then that, and the goals are gonna be broad, and then, you know, then you break it down from there. Because otherwise you get all these proposals in and it's like, does it fit our goal? Is it what we're trying to achieve? So this is, you know, a way to, you know, kind of, you start broad and then you narrow your criteria down.
My answer to all those questions is connected. And how do we get that collaboration piece? And when I think of the example in Winnebago County, I think of Levin up in Menasha, where they have United Way and all these other things in one spot to kind of bring services together, so they're all talking together. Amiral had that with the community center, and I think they found a temporary spot. But how do we get that community connected? How do we bring their things together?
You want to live in a county or a community that has connected
Nonprofits, is that what you're saying, or?
services?
I mean,
Connected
how do you
services?
connect the local governments? You know, how do we work together as a team? How do we connect? How do we collaborate? I don't know what the word is for that. I don't even know if that's a bucket. But anyway, that we can all work together instead of everybody working apart. I think that's the point. That's why we're here asking about sharing these funds, so that we can be stronger as a county as a whole, right? So, and the concern is not leaving a city alone outside of a town, outside of as a whole. How do we do that?
So families can receive services, efficient services. I mean, let's go a little further with that.
Sure.
What's the purpose of having 11 type of thing, or what's the benefit? Who
You
benefits?
don't have to fill out 12 applications.
Okay,
You
so it's,
go to one spot and they can wrap the services around you, and it makes it easier for those families.
Efficient access.
Efficient access. How do we do that instead of making a single mother who is possibly illiterate have to figure out how to do 12 different forms and go to 12 different spaces? How do we connect? And if we could if we use some of that money to figure that out, we'll be stronger as a county. How do we include the town of Rushford for that? Because poverty exists out there, you know, and poverty is not a city only issue. How do we connect better? And I don't know what a bucket even, what does that bucket look like? What is that? What kind of a priority is that? I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, we got it down, and we'll further
Okay.
consider it. Chuck?
I perhaps view this a little differently. First of all, when this document was introduced, and it has been approved by this commission, I accept it as it is, and I agree you might be able to add different groups within a certain category. But I suggest that what you're proposing is that we set up kind of a parameter, so each one of the criteria in these categories would fit within that parameter.
That's
Is
our
that
next
correct?
step. Yeah, so
So you're not trying to change this.
we're accepting that we.
You're just trying to set up some guidelines. For instance, on the back page, we deal with nonprofits. So each one of these nonprofits, and you could add more to that, would need to meet some kind of criteria that you're trying to develop. Am I understanding that correctly?
yeah, that's, I think we wanted to kind of like, what are those overarching goals? And then, you know, kind of goals first and say, you know, it's like, yeah, what is it that we really want to do with this funding? That you can say, you know, what is the result? Our population is better off, as a result of this. What is the end goal in mind? And then we work our way backwards.
Isn't that very general and
This is meant.
what is the goal? I think we all agree is to help our communities within this county by different means perhaps. Would you agree?
Yeah.
That's what we want to do.
Want to help community and that's great. What, when these funds came out and there was some, definitions about what the funds could be used for, those were put out at the federal level. What do we need here in Winnebago County, Wisconsin? What are the needs? What are the things, when you think of our community in Winnebago, what do you see as gaps that need to be addressed? What do you see as challenges that these funds could help with in Winnebago County? I mean, there's some very universal things that people need help with, but are there things specific to Winnebago County that you feel would benefit from these funds? We have, some challenges that are unique, right? I mean, the challenges we have in Winnebago County aren't the same as in Milwaukee or Green Lake.
I would agree that I would think off the top of my head, if you look at it broadly, housing would be the issue. People need to find and establish a standard of living. And housing certainly benefits that process. How you achieve that is leave it up to the county exec and greater mind. And just one example, I mean, and you gotta look at where people are. We got high inflation. They're trying to catch up on wages. I don't see poverty going down. In fact, I see more people in need of services. So if we want to look at it, that part of this focus, how do we address that? And I frankly don't know.
And I think those are some of the goals where you want
It's
to.
recognizing the
Right.
problem without a solution.
That's right, but you want families that are stable and able to support themselves, right?
Right.
To live in Winnebago County, we want families that are able to thrive here. We want children that are able to grow up healthy here. We want a safe community. We want our environment clean, or any of those, like, is it yes to all of that? Or is it like, yeah, I think with this, what we'd really like to prioritize families, because we know that there's a lot of increasing needs related to poverty. And then that funding, it's like, well, we're gonna work on families, we're really gonna work and it can include, there can include infrastructure because, families need, to get from A to B. It's just that, it's trying to say, like, if it's so wide open, then everything, you don't have any way to say if you've reached any of your goals, so it's trying to just identify what it is that, you wanna.
We're trying really hard not to direct you and push you.
That goes back to Tom's point. We have county services, human services, safety, roads, parks and recreation. That's all in the budget. It's all handled by 38 supervisors, 22 municipalities and a couple of cities.
36. We're not going to-
But they do a good job. Budget's been fine. My taxes are fine. And they treat those goals and issues on every time they have a meeting and talk about it. These are one-time funds. It's a 33 or $34 million by now with interest gift from, maybe a gift, it's taxpayer money, but it comes back to the taxpayers. There are 170,000 of us here. That's $200 per taxpayer. That is money that the county is receiving to make a statement, do something for the county, improve the county, make it a destination place, improve parks and recreation that will be there 50 years from now, that we'll remember when we spent those ARPA monies on, boat landing or a playground or a bike trail, something that is really impactful. And certainly there are homelessness, hunger, housing, there are many of those issues, but those are ongoing. And if we commit very many of these funds to an ongoing issue, we're simply creating a fiscal cliff that will need to be solved in 2 years. That could even be more of a problem for the county budget. So I'm I'm all for everything we talk about is good, but I really want to focus on one-time capital expenditures, impactful, and really a gift back to the taxpayers. It's taxpayer money.
I mean, maybe that's the point, capital expenses. And you said parks and recreation, capital expenses.
One concern, when I look back at the pandemic and some of the things we struggled with is we're not as self-sufficient as we used to be. With the amount of livestock we have in Winnebago County, our grocery store should never be empty of meat. We should never have to dump out milk. So supply chain, I don't know if that's, if there's something that we can do to, how do we become more self-reliant on ourselves? How do we figure out how we used to live 100 years ago again? I don't know if that's how do we connect our communities? Well, it's not, I mean, is that a butcher shop? Like, is that, I'm looking at my towns right now for the nod, how we could have done better. Because you guys did.
I don't know, ag is so dependent on the federal government, that I'm not sure there is an answer. You're posing a question, but I'm not sure there is an answer. Because the market system and everything is set up. I don't know if we could answer that.
So in 2019 was the last study that United Way did for the community needs because of the pandemic and blah, blah, blah. We're actually going into the next one to identify our community. So that's for Oshkosh area. Now, granted, it is not, we don't cover Neenah Menasha, but we mirror with Fox Cities, but we're Winneconne, Udemore out area. So it was the greatest needs in 2019. Response from the community was financial stability, was mental health, and early education, like issues surrounding kids needing advancement for early education. And when you look at the mission for Winnebago County, it talks about basic needs is really one of the pieces of connecting and supplying basic needs, which now I know when you said for the outliers, like if something's built in Oshkosh, but that doesn't mean it doesn't necessarily serve people outside the county. Damascus Road, I know, goes throughout anywhere, anybody. So even though it might be housed here, they still could have a huge percentage of the Neenah Menasha outlying population that still come to Oshkosh for those services. So I appreciate what you're saying, but I want to make sure that when those are looked at, it's not necessarily the geographical location of where something is placed, but how many people from the outlying areas that are being served as well.
I would hope that would be part of the application. 'Cause
Yeah.
You're right, it makes a difference, and I can support that.
Yeah.
So I think just taking a pause to like reflect back on some of these ideas that we've come up with and see if there's some consensus around some of that.
Yeah, I think what we wanted to do was, have you express our thoughts and ideas, just to make sure that, there was a theme kind of emerging about how we really wanted to use these funds. And there's, a few different opinions about how those funds should be used that are emerging in the room now. Again, we don't want to, we're trying not to direct it. I guess one of the things you may want to ask is, do you have all the information that you want or need to make some of these decisions? Is there something else that you need that would make you feel more comfortable in establishing these goals? And we can work on that, because this isn't something that has to end today. This is a living document. You can, modify this as you go. But to Ashley's point, what we'd like to do is to get that consensus. And, are there any items, I'm sorry, jumping on here. Are there any items that are on this list that anyone doesn't agree with, or do you want to have more discussion about? Because what we want to have a general consensus, and these are all, in the scope of when you make decisions now about your categories, right? When you define your categories and you apply criteria to your categories, they should all fit within, these goal statements, these larger goal statements.
And when I look at the money that is gathered, it's a one-time shot. Once it's spent, we're going to have to support whatever it is we either build or whatever it is we have to maintain it in some way or another. And the money will be gone as soon as we develop all of these little projects, and then who becomes the housekeeper to all of the projects, the little houses here, and the maintenance of a grocery store, or the trucking of food in, or whatever it is, that's going to have to continue.
So one of the questions that we can apply to the criteria, when you rank and place these items is sustainability. Is what you're proposing sustainable? Or is it providing a bridge to something where you don't need to continue to support it? I mean, ideally, when we talk about some of the issues that Beth brought up, financial stability, how to, keeping somebody out of a financial crisis, right? And have a really large cascading impact on their ability to thrive and be self-sufficient in this community. That may be a one-time help.
We have on our list radios for the sheriff's department. Yet these radios have a lifespan of about 10 years. And then what do you do? At the end of 10 years, do we build another fund somewhere?
Well, that's a criteria that you'll have to talk about. I mean, that's something that is probably gonna get funded, whether it's out of this fund or, other funds.
But that's what I'm getting at. This is a one-time fund. And once you spend it, once you give it all away, it has to be for useful purposes, but then even after, they only have a lifespan so long, and we have a maintenance obligation as a town, as a county, over all of the towns and all of the municipalities, maintaining in some way.
I think maybe, what do you think about accountability is, fund goals, have some kind of accountability that what they're saying they did with it. Is that the right way of putting it?
Accountability to what?
Consider the appropriation. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
like in other words, we gave it to you to buy widgets, well, you bought widgets.
I think some of those too, it might be that collaboration piece that you want to collaborate with other partners in the community. You have shared goals around families, economic, financial stability, that kind of thing. And then, as far as the maintenance or the sustainability, that's something that, you work with partners and that kind of thing. It's
Only with the promise that it's up to them to sustain it.
And I think you bring, by having, when people are making these goals together. And so partly it could be, more input, for, if that's a concern, then, we bring in potentially some other partners and address that before it's funded, where you're listening to community members, community partners, how are we gonna continue this? How are we gonna sustain this? And because you're asking these questions, right? But the people sitting at the table, don't have the answers for it.
All right, in an effort to try to keep things moving here, just one final call. Any items on this list that there is a strong concern about that we would want to determine whether we have consensus on or not?
Just one minor issue. We have defined expense numbers like the $120,000 for the fee stations at both landings, and we have theoretical, we need more safety or we need more housing numbers. So there's defined numbers and then there's unknown numbers. So I'd like to we'll segregate those two.
Again, that was suggestions from me.
But still, that topic is, you know, how do you help housing?
One of your decisions that are part of this process may be, you know what, we want to allocate X amount of dollars to housing, or we want to allocate X amount of dollars to early childhood education and childcare. And then you leave it at that, and you designate, you know, another entity to, you know, prioritize and report back on that funding use.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Fair point.
You know, I mean, identify, you know, who your community lead or expert is, and let them, inform you or guide you on how to use those funds best. The last thing we want to do is have you guys meeting for the next 3 years approving projects.
Right.
We kind of want to establish a framework, you know, have the priorities, you know, come to consensus on that, and hopefully have the county board support it as, you know, as a single document moving forward, or to as close as we can.
I think two words that I think go together for me is efficiency and consolidation. Like long-term, how do we make this easier for us to go? I mean, that's one of the big focuses for me when I'm looking at my internal stuff is how do we lessen the tax burden going forward? How do we become more efficient as a county government going forward? And I think, you know, asking the community the same, like, what is the way for you to consolidate and get more efficient? You know, when I think of that Levin model, how they kind of brought everybody together up in Menasha, that's more sustainable for all of us. So, you know, that would be a big thing for me, and it kind of reduces the worry of, can we fund this long term if we make it, you know, easier for communities to swallow.
You have to have buy-in, and that buy-in has to be from everybody that's involved in that one project.
That's right. Correct.
And I think that was really around, you know, basic needs and having, you know, kind of that one-stop shop for basic needs.
Yep.
Okay, so, last call, any items on this list that anybody would like to discuss further or not have in place in terms of a overarching goal?
I'm gonna get in trouble. Did you have a chance to look at the application that Tom made at all?
We've not.
All right, I guess I would hope that what would happen based on what you're having now, that this could be just reviewed to find out if there's more information that needs to be put on it. Because I think we're at the point where we should be able to do something with applications pretty soon. We're getting close to the point to knowing where we're going.
Well, I think that, so I'm gonna challenge you a little bit there in that I think you're looking at one very specific line of a document that was just meant to be an idea and a framework. And what we're asking you to do is think about the $33 million in its entirety. I know you've identified the 25, 50, and 25 buckets, and you're right, you're gonna have to develop some framework for whatever you decide is going to be just set aside for nonprofit applications. But what we're really asking you here is to think about what are the goals for each of those sections? The first 25, the middle 50, the last 25. What is the impact with those millions of dollars in those categories that you want to make? So you're right in that down the line here, there's some like additional things that'll need to be in for whatever you decide to do with the nonprofit application. But I'm really going to challenge you to take a step back for a second and take a look at these ideas and put them in the reference of what kind of impact do you want to make with $33 million, not the line item on the sheet that's for the nonprofit.
But my problem is I don't know.
Okay, that's great. I love that
You
because
may quote me on that.
then
I
the
don't know.
next, then I think the question going back to what Doug asked earlier is what additional information do you need, or what additional people do you need to hear from in order to feel like you have everything that you need to make these decisions? Because that's what I think we as county staff are here to help support you in doing, is hearing from people and getting you information so you feel comfortable making decisions.
My vision on that is I have 3 charts, 3 different 25, 50, 25, and there's applicants underneath one of those, we start reviewing the applicants, and as we review the applicants, we rate those on the list in that column, and then we go on from there. But for me to, like I said, well, peace on earth, we can do that one if you're up to that, but that, you know.
So the question is, are you gonna rate them based on, you know, sustainability? Are you gonna rate them based on helping families? Are you gonna rate them based on children being able to reach their full potential? I think that's the thing with the goal of like, we wanna help children reach their full potential. So, you know, related to early, you know, from early care, you know, all the way through high school graduation through, you know, post-secondary.
But based on what you just said, there was something in here that was gonna come out.
Welcome to Friday afternoon.
Yeah, no, but I think if I can get back on track here, is, yeah, I want to see it and then work on it and develop. In your case, you're trying to make it great big, and I can't envision that. And I can't rate that because it isn't, it is, it's everything right, and you're gonna have people here sitting in this room that are going to discuss things, because we don't all agree. I know you think we might, but we don't all agree. And it'll be fun to see how we go through that, because we all are human beings, and we respect each other, and we will come with an answer. But until I can see something, I'm hard time making up. I mean, my peace on earth is a good one. I mean,
Tom, one of the things we're trying to do here from a funder perspective is if you put the big flaw with that application is you put that out, and Beth can speak to this as a funder. And you get applications back, and then you discuss and you start discussing one, well, we want it to be geographically, we want to make sure the north side is taken care of. But we don't put that in a funding opportunity document. The nonprofits aren't going to know what to apply for and what to put in that application. The state, the feds, they all have staff dedicated to answering questions on what's being funded and what will rank higher than others. And so if you think kind of where we're trying to get to, and I know Chuck has said that administration needs to come up with a proposal, that's what we're trying to do here. So if you think about the state, the Neighborhood Improvement Fund, they put out this funding opportunity of $200 million neighborhood improvement with some kind of key components, which a lot of these are the key components. And we knew what exactly we had to get to in a 300 and some of the questions were 300 words. In order to craft those funding opportunities, we need to know what are the problems that you want to solve. And I'll use an example that came up. Today was a road project in Menasha. There might be trail projects in the town of Inland. They might want to pave some part of the Waialash in town of Inland. How do you score those against each other? You probably don't want to pave the Waialash in town of Inland. But if that's an application, so you get an application for Appleton Road and you get an application for the town of Inland. How do you score that against each other? How does the town of Inland compete against that? If they don't have some kind of guide work to do that on the front side, you guys are going to spin and they're going to spin and you're not going to get good application.
yeah, and that's why I think everything is.
And that's where we're headed.
Good.
Yeah.
It's just that I don't know the answer to the question you're asking. I'm being frank.
And that's fair. I mean, you know, and you'll learn more as you go, continue to ask questions and we'll.
And that's how come I asked about the application, if you had looked at it, because they're based on what it is. There might have been something you said, well, this might come in later on as we do that. And somewhere along the line, I think that you should review one person.
We'll certainly.
I think one of the things that's gonna help is that it's a capital. Don't put it towards a program. Like when I heard the gentleman talk about like the shoreline restoration, well, that's not like a one-time, that's not like we're gonna buy some, that's over the course of 10 years. And hopefully we have people sign up so I can see how, at least what you're saying, the legs around it are, you're buying a thing, you're buying the radios, you're paying for a property. That'll help eliminate a lot of, I think, hopefully, projects, at least. in the-
Sustainability issue, right?
Yeah.
You hire a bunch of counselors to do mental health with the
Right.
one-time money,
Mhm.
you're gonna be back at our door. So that's a good point. I don't mean to, but if the
No.
capital is the prerogative,
Mhm.
you know, that stuff will really help us as we write funding opportunities and resolutions for you to allocate some funds
So
to.
then maybe that's one of our goals, is we want it to be a one-time if purchase. We want it to purchase a thing or pay for something.
You don't want,
Not so dramatic.
you don't want the maintenance. of-
Right, exactly what you were talking about, Maureen, where, who's taking care of this?
One of the questions on a future slide with the graph on it is, you know, are they gonna, I forget how it's worded, but it addresses just that. Is this gonna incur some other future costs, or, you know, what's your sustainability?
Are you going to give us a copy of what you're putting together here by email so we can kind of study that a little bit?
Yeah, and you also have the list of resources that we just assembled a list of community resources, information about Winnebago County. For you to peruse, or if you have a particular topic that you're interested in, you know, and then you can always access us if you have questions about that.
You personally, Doug, or are we gonna get numbers?
You can, any of us, we'll make sure our contact information
Okay.
is available, and we'll do our best to help answer any questions that you have.
Speaking of this resource list, I think, you know, because we keep kind of circling around this idea of like, we don't really know what the need is yet. And there's a ton of really great ways to get at what the need is. One of the things that Heidi identified on this list here, we put it as the top one because it really is a great resource, but this is United Way 211 counts. It's information about all of the things that 211 is getting phone calls about. So you can filter it through Winnebago County and look at all of the different areas that that people are calling for assistance on. And that helps you, that might help you, I should say, kind of get some framework for what it is in the county that people are in need of and looking for. You can filter by county, you can filter by zip code, you can do a lot of different things to just kind of help put you in that framework of what might community needs be. And as you kind of filter that down, then you can make some decisions like Doug mentioned earlier, like who are your stakeholders and who might you want to hear from as you're deciding what these big project, or I'm sorry, bucket titles should be.
With or without the pandemic happening, there's community needs. And we're getting to a point where, you know, we're transitioning from pandemic response to pandemic recovery. The luxury of us having a little more time right now or being a little bit later is that we're not reacting to what's happening during the pandemic. We're now seeing what the impacts of that pandemic was. And then we can also start to look forward towards what's coming our way. You know, I don't want to direct things, and I was scared about sharing it, but when I made a short list of what negative impacts did we have from the pandemic, which was really the whole point of sharing these funds. I mean, you know, my quick list was we had an increase in poverty. We had job losses in our community, many due to retirements, many lost in the service industry. We had a decrease in access to childcare. We had increases in isolation, loneliness. We have older adults in our community right now that are still at risk. Pandemic has largely gone away for most people, not for seniors. You know, we had issues with supply chain and inflation, you know, that have created affordability issues. We've had education losses and delays. You know, our kids didn't lose education, so to speak, but they got delayed. And we're trying to catch them back up. You know, what are things that we can do to help, you know, get those kids back up to speed? You know, and what's coming into our community as we look forward. You had a presentation not that long ago at the county board on demographics and how our population shift is getting older. We're gonna have a much larger older adult population in our county by the end of this decade. What implications does that have in terms of housing, of people available for employment? We had a lot of women leave the workforce because of childcare issues. We want to bring women back to the workforce. We need workers. So what are things that we can do to, you know, help get women back in the workforce? You know, and then what does a better future look like? You know, those are the questions you're answering here. You know, things like better living wages. You know, the Alice report, which is on your list there. You know, people that have jobs that still can't make ends meet. Why is that? Or what are the things that we can do to support them? They're trying. access to affordable housing. You just saw a report recently where housing costs in Oshkosh rose over 16% year over year. One of the highest increases in the nation is right here in the city of Oshkosh. We all want less crime, right? We want, safer communities. We want people to have the supports that they need to not, to be self-sufficient. We want to help build self-sufficiency. And so any of the things that you offer that can help build self-sufficiency reduces the drain on our services and resources in the future. If you look at people in poverty, when you look at who's in poverty right now, most of the people that are in poverty right now grew up in poverty, right? It's a cyclical nature. Same thing with with adverse childhood experiences, trauma during childhood. Those are things that are cyclical from generation to generation. What are some of the supports that we can put out there to break those cycles? So those are just food for thought. Like I said, we're not trying to direct you in any way, but I just want to help stimulate some thoughts. All right, so we should probably move on now to the 3 buckets and just get the consensus on what each of those buckets really means. And then that'll help you solicit, populate and or solicit proposals. Do we need a break? We're good.
No,
We're good.
we're tough, right?
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll create a sheet for each of the categories. After we'll have them on the board, but I'll keep the overarching fund goals list available for you.
It's a boring time for you.
No, this is good. I've got menu at 5:30, so.
Maybe we're on the list for that.
For cooking?
Yeah.
So tonight,
If they were looking, if they were looking, but then we have Susan party, so then I was gonna reach out to you. But we have the county clerk's retirement, but next year, that's tonight, yeah. But next year, make sure we get it.
That would be great.
Because last year, we did get invited, but we were in DC, I think.
It was in, Raleigh,
Yeah. Like the second weekend, second Friday, yeah.
invite them now, so you guys.
Well, I think it's part of public record.
We're ready? We're ready. Right.
So we've got the big goals that you all came up with on the side here. We can throw them back up on the big screen as needed, but I think what we want to talk about here is you've got those categories. The 25, 50 of 25 categories. How are you defining those? What do each of those categories mean? And now looking at them through the lens of what your big goals are.
I will start with the internal ask and how I envision the internal ask as being with me and the team and administration get together and we'll propose these projects from the county's eye. So internally, what are the things we looked at? Kind of some of the things that were on that list, when I think about the pay stations, I was talking about Adam. Adam told me one of the issues during the pandemic was right now you have to fill out an envelope and put your money in the envelope and put it in. The ranger has to come out and we have to manage it. And it was really hard. And it would be easier if we just had these automatic pay stations that are all boat launches. So people could come in, put their thing and go. It would help the functionality of that. It would help the enforcement of that. It really would have helped him out a lot during the pandemic. So that was something that makes us more efficient in the future as far as the county goes. Digital rooms, of course, that's not gonna really be well, kind of a benefit to the public like this. Here we are still using 2 owls in the middle of this. 2 owls makes it easier to hear in this room. If you listen back to some of our other ARPA commissions, if there's only one, it kind of sounds like a drum. This isn't a very acoustically, it's an acoustically challenged room, I guess is how I would say that. Some of the building study, which is already underway, how do we become more efficient? So that county internal ask is really what that 25% is. When I get together at my team and we say, these are the things that we absolutely need in the county, this is what we're proposing. And then we either you approve them or you don't. And if there's something you don't approve and what our internal ask is, then it gets kicked back and we come up with something else. I know the radios have gone back and forth. I understand that. I'm comfortable with, allowing, even though the sheriff's department is the sheriff's a separate constitutionally elected officer, I allowed him to come and bring this forward through a county internal ask. Because it's something that we're gonna have to bond for whether we do or not. A one-time purchase to bring it forward. So that's how I would see that. Yeah.
Thank you. And, and what I want to do is I'm going to bring you back to, let's not talk about projects right now.
Yep.
Let's give me a 1-sentence definition of what this category is.
Administrative needs brought forward for this commission to consider to advise the board.
So brought administrative by, you mean saying like, county
Through me.
executive's office?
Yep.
So county executive's office will identify all of these items.
Right.
Are they outside of the what's budgeted for? I thought Morris brought that up.
I was just gonna bring that up actually on Tuesday county board meeting. And these projects are considered for approval by the board by either bonding or fundraising.
Correct.
So if that's approved, we take them off it? Or are you wanting reimbursement?
I don't want to drain our general, I think we're draining our general fund a little too fast here. So I mean, that's something for us to consider.
Well, none of the ones that were considered for ARPA should be on the CIP plan.
What's that?
None of the ones that should be on or considered for ARPA should be on the CIP plan.
I believe they are.
We
They are.
put
Several of them.
the fiber loop,
The fiber loop got put back on.
the building study got
Radios
passed in the
are on
budget.
there, too. Radios are on there, fiber loop, I didn't bring it with me. but
I don't think,
there's several.
radios are not. Radios are not.
They're gonna, yeah, because they're still pushing for ARPA.
Mhm.
I think the radio or the redundant loop was new.
RIV.
Well, the question would be then, if you're
That was not.
you're asking double in for, and rather than, if the board approves that, wouldn't we just take all that off the list and apply that somewhere else?
Is it one resolution?
Just take it off, you wouldn't need to even ask for it.
Yeah, but you're talking 640,000, so that would be applied to a different
For the sake
category.
of this,
Then that's not-
for the sake of this exercise, are these gonna be asks that are outside the regular budget, or could they be also within the budget? I think just if we can define that.
Excuse me. No, this is his, all of these for his example.
Oh, I understand
There's
that.
an
Yeah, I'm
example,
not looking at any of the
definition-
things.
Definition, what they're looking for is the
Mhm.
definition of that category.
Right, so are these gonna, would your suggestions be things that were outside the budget, or could they be?
I intend to to hold the line on what we asked for, whether we pass the budget or we pass or not, I'd rather not bond for those things. You know, this is money that we spent foolishly, maybe not wisely, I don't know. The things that I proposed that we for a 25%, there may be a couple adjustments, but I don't think a lot. Most of the things that we went forward. But
John,
there,
I'm not asking you to justify,
No,
I'm just trying
yep.
to clarify that, because it's
Yeah.
okay if you're saying that it might also be, it might be to alleviate pieces of the budget, that's okay, but just for that definition.
yep, the first bucket, 25%, I would say let administration bring the here.
But I think what Beth is saying is one of our $10 million of CIP every year might not be enough, maybe it is enough, who knows? But year after year, except for the last two, all of that's borrowed. Except for the last maybe 3 years. So it was 7 and 4, then 6 of our money. So a contemplation of this category could be that don't borrow for a period of time, or don't borrow for projects that might not have a 10 or 15-year return. Why would you borrow for a radio on a 10-year note that that would use up the useful life? So that could be a definition consideration.
Outside of the budget and or so we wouldn't have to borrow money as part of the county. I didn't know.
I think what we need to do, the executive knows how to do it. So go down through this list and find those that were initially in the CIP and cut them out of there until you take the money away from them entirely. And that means the money that was put in there in 2022, or the money that may have gone in there in the last budget for 2023. Get it out of there so that you can deal with it as an ARPA fund. And if it's not been dealt with that way, then it doesn't belong in the ARPA group. Okay, period, end of story.
So, thank you. And we can create a secondary list of issues to reconsider. But I'll bring you back to, what we want to have is consensus on what is this bucket? And right now, the consideration for bucket number 1, county internal ask, is our projects that are identified and put forth by the county executive's office. That's what's on the table right now. Is there anything else that we want to add or discuss related to that?
I have no problem.
Right, I mean, the two things that I considered is they're either capital cost, and I didn't want to bond for, or planning documents that make us more efficient long term. And that's what I want to focus on, things that make us more efficient.
So,
That's it.
yep, and so the details, we'll work on later.
Yep.
This is what this category is, so everybody's clear about what goes in there. It's all identified by the county executive office. I'll just ask one question before we move on, and that is, do we see any potential challenges with that down the line? Our goal here is to get these projects approved. So ultimately, it's going to be up to the county board to make a recommendation of approval based on the guidance from this committee. Are there any concerns about that at all? I just want to make sure we address that first.
I don't think that the board should be able to change what this committee says. If we say that he's gonna do it with this, it should go that way, shouldn't it?
We're advisory only.
Yeah.
We don't have any authority in this board to spend. We are advising the board as only.
Right.
Yeah,
But as far as what they're spending on, that's yours.
for that 25%.
Yeah.
Right.
So I mean, if they wanted to change it,
Right.
they can.
Well, they say A or nay.
Yeah, it's either thumbs up or thumbs down. If it's thumbs down, I come back with something else with that amount of money. Correct.
So rephrased, what definition of this category is most likely to pass the county board muster? So what?
Knowing the county board, I don't know if I'm gonna answer that.
So what, if these 3 things were achieved, we think that's got the most likely shot of passing.
Could we go ahead to the next 2 and then come back to this one?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, category 2, community projects and county functions. Currently, that bucket is half of the funding. roughly 17 million. And what I've understood so far from watching meetings is that these are projects not for the county organization itself, but for the community, but are implemented by the county departments. Is that about right?
Yep.
Okay, so county-led projects supporting the community. I'm looking for language. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I don't know what any of that means. Lean, I don't know what that means.
How would you say it?
So internally, these are things that the general public doesn't really benefit from, and maybe the pay station's in the wrong group because of that. So I don't want you to be confused by that. You know, these are the things that maybe the county does that benefits communities as a whole. For instance, one of the things on there just to contemplate was veteran housing. Can our veteran services pair up with other people to produce transitional housing or permanent housing for veterans? You know, but as a function through veteran services. Is a question. The land and water thing. Do we give Chad Casper Land and Water a $3 million bucket to go work with farmers to work on actual sustainability? It's going to impact our waterways for years to come. It's not something that's directly, we're doing it through the farmers, but through a department of the county. Does that make sense?
That makes more sense.
And that would include shoreline buffer, urban areas, etc.
Right, that would, yep, rain gardens,
So a key term I'm hearing here from you is partnership.
partnership.
That these are gonna be led by the county, but to serve the community with the intention of there being a partnership
Through
between.
departments,
Okay,
right, yeah.
And so will that be, is that a criteria then that we want to consider as we go into that, you know? So who's gonna populate? What's the input process for identifying items that go into this category?
I think we're gonna give them to the executive.
Yeah.
To keep a long story short, I mean, eventually it probably has to come in his office. And then there's gonna have to be some work done on it. Sure. You have the staff to do that, and then it comes back in the proper. Right, what they think is the proper column, and then the committee looks at it again and makes any moves that they think it should be.
Is this a community call out for partnerships? Is this a discussion with the county board? Is this how are you going to populate this portion of the funding? What is?
LCC or USDA. Any of these committees and departments that have to do with community partnership, period.
Yeah, I guess that's the struggle. That's why we're facilitating here.
How would you got 3 million for towns as an example in this category? What kind of partnership are you referring to?
This is for you to decide. You have it in here.
I mean, I don't know how I would define partnership with distributing that funds.
Sure.
Could we use the word project?
Again,
Which I will
focus on items in a category. Let's just.
Chuck, maybe rephrase. Somebody calls you and says 50% of ARPA is spent on community projects to county functions. How would you describe that category to them? What does that category mean to a constituent that calls you? In your words, then.
Well, that means if there are projects that our departments administer through county functions by departments that benefits, for instance, in land conservation practices, that's the purpose of that fund. But I don't know how I would describe it when you talk municipality.
Can I ask this? Let's just use an example. Let's just say a fire truck, for example. Would there be a way for us to have that facilitated through emergency management as a funding source? That we could do? Is that a way to do that? Or are you saying there's not a way?
Oh, no,
Is the question.
offering no opinions.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, how do you describe it? It's quick, for the towns, you could argue that these are really subrecipient grants to improve or encourage programs the county already has. So, two requests we have from towns are radios, to buy their radios, and to improve a park on the old, I hesitate to say, the old county park in Winnebago. So the village wants to do a grant through the DNR to do that. Both of those radios, things like that, are county functions. But we don't actually pay for them. We would get a grant to help improve that. Does that make sense? So maybe this category is basically all subrecipient. There's all.
There you go.
Aren't you defining
Of some-
project? You just defined two projects.
Yeah, as an example, to say this category is a big category for the county to give subrecipients to help county. I don't know,
So the community, the county prioritized projects, funding of county prioritized projects versus our third bucket, which is really a community prioritized projects, you know.
They are sub-maintained.
Right, and that's what, you know,
They are not as sustainable as some of the other projects that we have out there, and they will need to be maintained by the community themselves at a later time. You're talking about radios, you're talking about a park, you're talking about water and land and water. Those things have to have a maintenance over a period of time, and yet we're going to put money towards it. So you put it into a subrecipient contract and maintain the contract beyond the life of the contract.
You will make decisions about what the criteria are for funding. Right now, we're just identifying, you know, what is this category and how, you know, who populates that category.
So these are projects that benefit the community, but the community isn't applying for money to do it, right?
right.
Because I'm trying to think of how the newspaper is gonna write this. Here are the three categories.
Right.
And then projects that help the community as a whole, but it's not an open application for the community. And that's what the third function kind of is, right? Then that's community.
So is it safe to say
Managed.
community prioritized, county prioritized community projects?
Yeah, I think that's it. This is more of our department's asking community versus community asking the county.
I think of your constituents calling you, how do you, well, this wasn't for the county, but wasn't for the individuals to apply for funding. Because that's, I get people calling all the time, we need $3 million for this project, well, there's only. I think that's great, that it helps section off how much is being spent where. Okay,
These are community defined projects for
County.
the county, or the county defined projects for the community.
yes.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Who asks for the money? Who asks for the funding?
Well, so who's populating the grid on this, or who are the stakeholders that we're asking to help us identify what those
Like
projects
the
are?
lady with the sidewalk that presented early on. So, and then she would go through the county department, and then the county department would move it up to our level.
That's a process that you could identify, you could put out a request to the community for ideas, or have it at a county board meeting, or.
And I think this is where, you know, the idea of like, what's the criteria or what's the impact of this? You know, we're back to that idea of the goals, like, so it's just gonna be first come, first serve, or, you know, how are they identified?
Yeah, I mean, I would envision this as the way of our departments that are service oriented, our customer service departments that are out there with the people. How do they make their own lives better? You know, what are ways for them to make their jobs easier to the community? How do they help out?
Except
I don't know, that's confusing.
everything I'm hearing doesn't apply to distribution of funds to municipalities.
That's what I'm saying. I think it does. Like if, as long, that's why I asked, can emergency management do that? Like if the question is radios, you know, could that be something like maybe Eric goes out because he's involved with the towns. I mean, he helped when the storms came through. He's connected. He's been up in the towns meeting. Can that be facilitated through him?
But
If it's-
you're narrowing it down to a project, really. The town's needs are far broader.
Correct.
Probably roads, capital improvements, that kind of stuff.
And
And I thought
roads would
we,
be through highway, right?
I thought we had already determined that we were not going to require a submittal by a town for a project.
Chuck, I might submit that you just change, rather than saying it county functions, do government functions, and then that'll solve your.
Sure.
So they're government prioritized community project or project.
Excellent, yes. And I think that's this commission's decision on how to distribute that fund.
Right. Yeah.
Not requesting a project.
Right.
But can we distribute those funds that the municipalities can use within certain criteria? That's certainly the focus I'm on. And I think your word change is beneficial.
Yeah. Sure, word change. I just thought of it.
Just thank you. I'll take that. That's a freebie.
You got it.
So I mean, within that category, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I like land conservation. I happen to be chairman of the committee, so I can tell you that purpose is to supplement a lot of these projects that are already funded and enhance the amount the county applies. Many of these projects are 70%, so the farmers got to come up with 30. If they ain't got 30%, the project don't get done. We're trying to make that 90. So the money allocated would supplement that extra 20%. Specific to your comment, when we do these projects, they actually deed restrict. And it's under contract. So they have to maintain them for generally 10 years. Deed restriction, so it's done. And that's why we use the term legacy, because conservation progress will go from 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, etc. But that's a different kind of category. That's administered through the county landwater conservation department. We identify the need, but the farmers have to apply for that project to be funded and engineered. So it's a little different group than when you talk about funding for municipalities.
But all kind of fit under that same definition
You have
of,
to use the word government.
prioritized community projects that are meant to be a partnership with the community. I think you just illustrated that.
Some of it
quite
isn't
well.
always initiated by departments within the county though. On the municipality group would be initiated by this commission for that fund. The other ones, let's take another one, which on here, IT upgrades, that's initiated by our department, right?
Yeah.
They identify those upgrades,
Yeah, if I can.
electrical, veterans, etc.
I'm sorry, Chuck, I want to keep us on the definitions here first, and we'll talk
Okay.
about specific projects moving forward. You know, for this category moving forward, you know, we'll probably be asking you to identify some criteria to apply so that you're able to, you know, rank those items or prioritize those items. And then another thing you'll have to do is decide how you wanna get projects on this list. You know, who identifies those projects. And so we can certainly talk about that too, but for today, as we're running fairly late here, I wanna get to the third category, and then we can decide how long you wanna go. So I think we're pretty clear on bucket 2. Bucket 3 is community external acts. Does anybody wanna propose some language for that?
I would propose the word nonprofits, or do we have that?
Well, do you limit to nonprofits? I mean, what if there's somebody trying to get broadband out there? And again, I understand there's so many buckets for broadband that's out there, but that might be the problem. That might be the New York problem where everybody steps over somebody because there's so many people that are expecting somebody's gonna help. I'm worried that we're gonna be so worried that so comfortable, there's all these projects out there, nobody's actually gonna attempt it. So I don't think it necessarily has to be a nonprofit. I think it could be an individual. You know, for example, if we want to do the startup for Starlink, if we want to do grants for people in rural areas that we can't really get wired to because there's so many marshes, rivers, lakes in our county, can we do something that covers that $300 upfront cost for them to get the unit and then they continue on with the monthly subscription? Can we do funding for that where citizens can apply? So not necessarily a nonprofit, could be a citizen, and it could be a business that helps to offer something out there better. What about our CVBs? Tourism took a big hit. You know, is there a way for them to apply for these things? So really, when I say community, I don't know if I want to limit that to just nonprofits only. Is the question. Maybe. Yeah, no, that's enough. That's enough on me.
It depends, where do you want the emphasis here? Do you want it, do you want to say community here, or do you want to just say non-governmental? I think it's nice to say community, because I think it's clearer.
Yeah.
I like the non-governmental because you kind of got that covered in number 1 and number 2.
Yeah.
And that opens it up, number 3, saying it is something that isn't right in there.
I would challenge a little bit because I go back to your oversight.
Mhm.
So how do we know? We just gave you this grant, how an individual, where at least the CB, they're not technically a nonprofit, they're a not-for-profit, 504 something. Yeah, what's another word? Because I don't know if somebody had an individual application for a thing, if I would even really consider that, because what's the legacy, what's the capital? I think of a big impact and one person getting internet.
I still see us setting up the buckets.
Yeah.
You may reserve a certain amount of funding
Mhm.
for a specific function like that.
Okay.
You know, so that, and then, then you've allocated X amount of dollars for that one thing as a part of your grid. If you decide to prioritize that.
Okay.
When you're dealing with something as individual as this, aren't you setting yourself up for the winners and the losers, the people that didn't get it and the people that did? When you go into a community and say a particular business now gets a $300 kick for Starlink, and another business down the street wanted it but didn't get it.
So I think this is a category where you have a defined application period of time with a cutoff date. An application that, asks them to answer the relevant questions that you want to have for criteria. And then thirdly, you could ask, rather than trying to administer this yourself, you could ask an organization that already does this, right, that distributes funds to the community, Community Foundation, United Way. There's organizations that this is what they do. They manage an endowment and they receive grant applications. They process those for them and then allocate the funds. You could take that off of your hands and have an entity that specializes in doing that, do that for you under the parameters that you set.
For a high level bucket, I'm fine with non-governmental. I mean, now working through some of that makes sense to me.
So
Or
And it's the proposal here, right? It's the
Yeah.
community proposed.
I mean, again, I think we stick with the theme of capital, one-time purchase. Not an ongoing cost.
Anything we do is gotta have that tag in the back end, say, one time, no time, not gonna get it again, whatever you gotta do.
And I think that's all the criteria piece that you all can establish, and I would add into that, that's, you know, kind of to your point too, of like having a decision-making process, right? So you're establishing the grid here, and then I think one of your next steps might be to consider having a, you know, transparent, open decision-making process on how you're gonna decide on all these things that come up. So when you do go into a community and somebody doesn't get funded, or you know, you're automatically disregarding an application because it's not capital, you've established all of those things and you're open and upfront about what they are, so people know what they're getting into when they apply.
It's a very good comment.
All right, we were gonna go back to
Number one.
Number one.
number one. So these two other buckets provide some clarity on number one. Do we wanna offer up any adjustments to the language right now? It's the county executive team that's proposing those up.
From my perspective, and I don't want to speak for Beth, but we don't know much about what the county executive wants to do with county money that isn't covered by, you know, your current budget. So I'd vote for anything you told us. Really. There we go.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I'm gonna repeat this. So what we have here are county executive identified county projects.
Now, you're gonna watch that county executive and his team,
Yep.
not just him.
No, it would be through me, but I
Just
work,
you?
yep, but I work with the team, but some of our departments, they're not community facing.
That's right.
Yep,
You will handle the phone calls.
right, like I'll work together with facilities, you know, whatever needs there are, or you know, long-term goals to make us more efficient that aren't necessarily outward facing, community facing.
So county executive team identified and led county projects to be proposed to the commission.
Right.
So you'll, so as a part of this, you'll identify as much of this as you can. You'll allocate all those funds. And then the commission will support that or not, or
Thumbs up, thumbs down, yeah.
the commission can just say, look, you know, we want the county executive to make these decisions on these projects. We don't have to know what they are. I don't, you know, what.
No, I don't think we're going that.
I'm just-
Oh, yeah.
That's why I'm asking, right?
Come on, Chuck.
Like,
I have a function.
what is gonna likely get supported by this commission and by the county board ultimately? And that's the language you want to choose right now, so that you're describing it right out of the gate.
Doug, as I mentioned before, there are some of these projects that are sitting out here that are capital projects that we have in the book. And if we're going to fund them,
That's not really part of this discussion right now, though.
well,
If you have an issue with it, when it comes here, just vote it down.
I'm only one vote.
Well, argue hard when it gets here.
We won't know if it is or isn't.
Right?
Right,
Or we won't.
You'll have to convince us.
right.
You can establish that as a criteria if you want to. You need to identify whether or not it's currently in the CIP.
I can attest to one thing, I did not put 3 rubber stamps on this commission for myself. I wanted to challenge it and make sure that we had really good community members. As you can tell, Tom's voted against me. My old guy I put on here is voted opposite of me almost every time. That's how I want it. Right.
Do we need
Right.
to have language, and maybe that's farther down, but do we need to have language that say, John doesn't spend the 8.3 million, there's an extra million that says it only stays there, or that it could, that the commission could talk about moving it to another bucket?
the commission can do that regardless.
Or regardless, yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if that
You
was.
don't have that authority yet.
Right,
Yeah, so we'll appropriate, the way it works is
through chapter 6590 of the statutes, the county board had to put it into the budget. And so it'll be 2/3 vote on the county board, so they'll appropriate the money for each specific project. And if at the end, it's not appropriated and the commission decides we want to move that to a different bucket, or we want to fund more projects,
Okay.
we would have the prerogative to do that, because it would go into a resolution and go there. This is a more of a
Okay.
guiding document for this
Yeah.
commission on what you're going to propose to the county board.
Mhm.
So you could decide later, we want to change the money.
I'm
and
like the
propose-
25%, yeah, that's, I
Yep.
don't know, once it's approved,
No.
like it's hard lined, okay.
All right, so I'm just gonna do a check-in here. How are you guys doing? Do you wanna keep going? We've got a couple of things here to finish with yet today. One of them is gonna be, what are our next steps? You know, what meetings are coming up? How do you want to communicate information from this? The work we have yet still to do is, now that we've, identified the core titles of each of these buckets, we want to identify some criteria that we can apply, especially, for applications that we may want from the community or ideas that we might want from the community. We do want to set some parameters on that. So as we discussed before, people know what they should apply for. And then for the county-led projects, we'll probably need to talk about how do you want to populate that list? Do you need input from anyone? And then is there any information, that you need to, help understand, any of the needs or priorities for the community?
When you said that, did you mean what category they should apply for?
Well, yeah, so I think now that the categories are established, we want to have some defining criteria, and then probably an evaluation process for projects that are submitted, so that you as a group can prioritize what gets funded and what doesn't, or what you can prioritize your recommendations to the county board.
Is there a question there?
Well, so what's the will of the group? You want to dive into some of that work? You guys need maybe a little mental break from some of that, and I'll give you some homework to do. And then when you meet again, we'll address that. But the things we still have to do today are just talk about what's our next step in terms of sharing information from this. And
Let's get to that. I think everybody has enough to chew on.
this is hard work. I give you guys a lot of credit. I mean, these are difficult meetings.
Would it be appropriate for the board meeting next Tuesday to let them know that we're doing something and like, I think what we can say for sure is there are 3 categories and we're working at putting stuff to that. I mean, it would give us at least, the board would know we're doing something. You may not tell them exactly where we're at yet, but we're going ahead.
So I would suggest that since the county board ultimately has to approve this, you give them frequent and regular updates. Do you want to have the board make approvals to steps that you're taking, or do you want to just keep them informed until you present a final?
I think inform until we bring projects forward for them.
It's a resolution adopted, this commission gave authority to this commission. The county board function is to approve the appropriation of funding. That's their responsibility.
So who's gonna do that?
I can do it in my report.
And we can help you with some visuals. Is there anything from the resolution that failed the county board that needs to be addressed or done with this?
I think we're gonna go over that next month. Right.
Yep.
So that'll be on the agenda.
Is that coming up in the agenda this
No, we're gonna go in March, and then we talked about here before.
At this commission.
Yep.
So we're gonna
We gotta-
revisit those resolutions.
March 9th, commission meeting. It'll come to this body on March 9th.
Yep, and then to the board.
And then to the board.
March 21st.
We'll get another crack at it.
Because that's what
I
we're.
expect you to talk highly of.
And to answer Tom's question, the special orders meeting on March 7th, there's a schedule, again, Paul's scheduled your presentation. I don't know if they realize it yet, but initially I have Tom and John as chairs also as a adding to that presentation, giving an update of where it is. You have a huge agenda next, on the 28th, so we moved that from the timeline we talked about at the last commission meeting. We moved that presentation to the 7th because of, I don't know how many resolutions,
No, that's-
20 some resolutions.
You're doing what you're supposed to.
Yeah, so we wanted the board to have more time rather than feeling rushed with that presentation.
Are we set up more than one meeting in March?
Right now, only one, I think.
Just the one?
We have March 9th.
Right.
Would it be out of order to suggest that, given the task this commission has, that we might want to start meeting twice a month? Just something to think about.
Either that or dinner meetings.
I think once we get in the row of things, and I think once staff helps us define this, I think we'll ramp it up a little bit to get some things going. But I want to give them enough time to really dive into this.
All right, so then you've got a little bit of homework to do before next time. Please, if you have questions about priorities, take a look at some of the resources on that resource sheet that you have. Start thinking about the criteria that you want for each of these categories. It's gonna be a long discussion. So the more prepared you are for that discussion, the better. Just keep a notepad going for the next couple of weeks and put your ideas down about, what are the criteria that you want to have? Where do you really want to see the money used?
So my mind doesn't work good like that. I usually have to have examples. Is that gonna cause a problem?
No, we can do that. We can work on what
Just
you,
generic things.
what you did today, some of the work you did. We can put together maybe a better document here
Well, just again,
and put some ideas.
make up things
Yep.
that say, okay, then where will we do that? Like, which one will we put it in?
Yep.
What goes in it?
We might be able to identify a couple tools for you too to consider. Like I said, we don't want to direct this, but we want to make sure that you have what you need to make decisions.
Just quickly, because it's a visual, I mean, this is just an example, right, of looking at the projects and then kind of putting on the grid where they would fit. That if you're looking to meet a need versus the impact on population, how many people? So, is it a small population, low need versus a small population and a high need? Or, and thinking about having projects that maybe hit all of those quadrants. Potentially.
Or at least the outer range, where you have a higher population and higher needs being addressed with your projects. And what we can do is once you have projects, we can help you populate where they might fit on that so that you can see, all right, if we fund this group of projects, these are the areas that we're having an impact.
And that goes back to that earlier conversation about the impact, where it's really in that large population, high need, where you can have the greatest impact. So that's where you certainly, have the opportunity to put some funding.
And again, this is just a suggestion, if there's a different process or a different way you'd like to look at the proposed projects, please just let us know. So before we wrap up, just want to do a check-in with you on the format of today's meeting. Did this format work well for you? Are there things about today's meeting that you would like to change or do differently in the future? We just want to make sure that we're meeting your needs as a commission. So, I guess we can just go around the table with that.
No, I thought you did a nice job trying to rein us in, get us on task.
Yeah, and if there's any recommendations, please let us know.
I perfectly good with it. I just have to get on board. I don't think like this. But I can.
I'll think about it. It's a good beginning. And the application to the specific criteria will be more specific to my thoughts. It's a start, right?
I think it was a good beginning. I think we just have to keep ourselves all on track.
Doug, I think, because it gets us all involved. Everybody involved. And, that's number one in my mind, as to how we did. Well, time will tell, but I think we're getting there. Thank you.
Yeah, no, like I said, we want to meet your needs to move this forward. So your feedback is appreciated.
I'm gonna keep my cards close to my chest still.
I'm thinking the same.
Well, this was good, other than it doesn't help us spend money faster.
No, it doesn't, but you can be more, we're hopefully gonna be more deliberate and it'll be more clear to all of you and to the community, why you made the decisions that you did.
And we still don't know what Tom doesn't know, so that's clear.
That's an ongoing.
I was impressed by some today.
Anything you guys would like to see next time, any requests for next time? Does this format work okay?
Yeah, I don't know. You guys seem to get it together. I don't know if Ethan's in with you or not, but you guys all seem to work together good, so.
We can make sure that this all gets shared out as part of the minutes and to all of you with contact information and things. So you have the links to reference and know how to get over with all of us.
You're going to provide examples in what we are going to put together for next time.
Would you like examples?
So,
Okay.
Yeah, maybe if you could walk us through exactly, how a funding opportunity would look like. And then we could figure out what that is. Let's say we'll just say broadband, for example, what would that look like? How would we do that?
Yeah, and for you to think about within each of the three buckets,
Mhm.
are there areas that, you definitely want to see addressed? Are there some priorities? Like, you want, a certain amount to go to transportation or to housing or to small businesses or to, where do you really want to, what's your flavor of this? Where do you want to make a difference?
Okay.
Where do you need more information?
Yeah, and where do you need more information?
All right. Thank you very much. Well, we got next meeting dates, we're still agreed on that?
9.
Yeah.
1 o'clock or 1:30.
Well, whatever is posted on is what we gotta go by.
I don't think anything at this time.
One works.
Yeah.
Does one work for you? Yes. All right, we'll keep it at 1 o'clock. Yep.
1 o'clock. Oh, I gotta change my.
We'll be late.
Yeah.
We'll talk.
All right, now I'll entertain a motion.
We adjourn.
All right, all in favor?
We're doing pretty good at this. I think we might take.
Oh,
I think so.